My name is Syria Floyd,
And my name is Krupa.
and this episode we're just going to be talking about how to take care of yourself while balancing other responsibilities. So the first question is, how do you take care of yourself while taking care of your academics and other responsibilities like social and chores?
So for me, I think a big thing is time management. So sometimes I get really busy with classes or sports, or there's just a ton of stuff going on in my life. But you have to be really good at managing your time so that you can also at least like have the opportunity to take care of yourself. So for me, I have a planner. So I usually like write down all the things I have to do, like classes, if I have work that day, plus like just I'm going to the gym, like even social stuff I'll put in my planner so then I know like okay, like I'm busy until like 7 today and then after that I can kind of do whatever. So I guess for me, taking care of myself is something that I have to work to fit into my day because I can get really busy, but just as long as you manage your time, it's really easy to then like, have the time to take care of yourself.
I'm pretty similar. I This year I just started using like my calendar on my phone and like setting up reminders. That has been like a really big thing for me because I like it's a really easy way for me to know like, oh, in 5 minutes I have to, like complete this assignment for school, and it's been really helpful so that I don't double block things and I can like if anybody's like, "Hey, are you free tonight?" like I can just quickly pull up my phone and be like, "Oh yeah, I am free." So that's definitely a really big thing for me. And another huge thing is just like setting up a good routine. Like I'm a very I'm a creature of habit, so like once I start doing something, I'm gonna like make sure it's still in my routine. So like I've just figured out ways to put taking care of myself in my routine so that it just flows a lot easier and I'm not going to forget about it. So the next question is, what is the hardest thing to juggle while focusing on academics?
I think for me, being a senior in high school now and like about to go to college, the hardest thing to juggle is always like the academics and social life balance. And social life can include like your regular friends, but it can also mean like spend the time that you spend with your family, the time you spend like going out with them, and just like anything in a social context is super hard when you're focusing on academics. Because I remember for me, like junior year is super busy, right? And I was like going to school at like 8 a.m. and then like doing like homework and projects and studying until like 7 or 8 p.m. And I remember I was like, wait, like actually when do I get time for other stuff? And I'm a kind of person for me, like sleep is so important. So I was like, shoot, like I actually can't go outside anymore. Or on days where I was prioritizing my social life, I was like, oh my God, like I can't study for this test. So I think the hardest thing is finding a balance between like first, like what can you even take on academics wise that won't like destroy your social life, and then also like how far can you take your social life before it starts to hinder your academics.
I think mine's pretty similar in that way. I also have a really hard time just figuring out my emotions. I tend to like beat myself up if I'm not getting something or if I'm like not doing well academically. And so for me, it's junior year has especially been hard for me. Going into my senior year, I'm getting a little more stressed just because like now it's not really like academics I need to focus on. It's more like getting things done, college apps, like last homecoming, last prom. So like that I think I'm gonna have to juggle with. But especially junior year, your academics are super important. And I just had a really hard time just trying to like let myself learn at the same time and let myself make mistakes. So I think for me, it was kind of just figuring out how to juggle my own emotions with how I was doing academically. And then obviously like social life, figuring out how to let myself have fun, but also buckle down at the same time. So the next question is, do you find yourself focusing more on responsibilities and academics over yourself or not?
I think I definitely do that all the time because like in the Bay Area, like I go to Monte Vista, so there's such a huge emphasis on academics and like oh you have this like volunteering event, you have this like all these extracurricular sports, all that stuff that I think taking care of yourself personally definitely ends up going on the back burner a lot. Most of my friends, like all of my friends, lose sleep all the time studying for finals. Like I do too. And I think like focusing on yourself is also like not only like self-care and being alone, but like that's also social life. When you go out, like when you're doing things that are just for fun rather than like for your GPA, like that's focusing on yourself. And I think for me, like when I'm thinking about like my responsibilities and my academics, that brings me a lot of anxiety. So when I'm thinking about like whether I'm going to do that or if I'm going to take care of myself that day, I'm like it's going to bring me more anxiety if I don't like do my homework or if I don't study for this test or if I don't do that chore. So I'm like, okay, I end up focusing more on that stuff, which is of course like pretty detrimental because I'm like I should be taking care of myself and it always catches up to you eventually, but definitely like I always find myself picking one over the other.
I definitely agree where you said like you get a lot of anxiety if you don't end up doing it. I definitely like I get that 100%. I also go to a school where academics is like huge and it's hard because we're like one of the only high schools in the area that are super huge in academics, and it can be hard because especially now going into senior year you're constantly thinking like what should I have done to improve my resume, what should I have done to get me into that college. So I definitely find myself focusing more on my academics than myself, and I think this year I've really learned how to take care of yourself and how to find the balance between putting yourself alongside your responsibilities, because like my mom always tells me like if you're not taking care of yourself your academics aren't going to count in a couple of years if you're not there anymore, and if you're not taking care of yourself now there's no point in focusing on your academics because you might not be here in a couple of years when those academics pay off.
Yeah,
um,
and one thing I wanted to add is like when you're not taking care of yourself, even like short term, that stuff always catches up to you. Like for me, if I don't
mhm.
get like good sleep or if I'm super stressed for a couple weeks in a row, my body just like shuts down and I get like
Yeah.
sick for a day. I think that's so important because like your mom's totally right. Like if you're not
Yeah.
taking care of yourself, like the long run, it's a huge issue, but also short term, you'll feel it and it feels really
Mhm.
terrible.
Yeah, it's definitely not fun. So like if you don't take care of yourself now, like your academics, you're gonna see the suffering in your academics as well. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not gonna perform at your best for academically, and that can then just add more anxiety. So figuring out how to find a balance, I think is super important. So the last question is what is one tip you would give to someone who's struggling between themselves and other responsibilities?
Honestly, at the end of the day, like you can't do it all, right? Like you could try to focus on yourself all the time and you can try to like fulfill all these responsibilities, but at the end of the day, it's like totally impossible to have all of that and to do it all successfully. So, if I had like a tip that I would give, it would definitely be to like try to understand yourself a little better and figure out how to make that balance instead of like becoming so overwhelmed trying to do it all. Like one way that I would characterize like my high school journey is like the first 2 years I spent actually just doing too much and I felt like I was drowning all the time. And that's such an uncomfortable feeling. So if someone is like struggling between like juggling all of these different things, feeling like overwhelmed, the big thing is you just have to pick and choose. So sure, like you might not be able to take like all the APs that you wanted or like do all of like the extracurriculars and sports that you wanted, but it's like a choice that you have to make. And it's always important that like there's definitely like a minimum like taking care of yourself you can do before you start to like feel a really severe negative impact, right? So you need to create like a balance of okay, like this is a non-negotiable, like this is how much I'm going to focus on myself. This is like the amount of time that I want to give to myself every day or every week and then be like, okay, what like responsibilities can I now add on?
I definitely agree with that. And if I would give a tip, my tip would just be like, you don't have to do it all yourself and you don't have to do it all at like anyway. Like, there are people in your corner, even if you don't think there are people in your corner. This isn't a journey that like you're a teenager. You don't have to go through this alone. There are people in your corner that can help you. And also, I would say, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Like, this is the one time that you get to genuinely make mistakes. So don't feel like you have to be this perfect human being that just does it all. Like, it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to have to pick and choose. So yeah, that's what I would give. So thanks for watching.
Thank you for
Okay.
having me.